Common Misconceptions 7.0, Lawful Fictions and Legal Fictions. November 20, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. In our discussion about states, we got a glimpse of how many different kinds of states there are, or which may be defined and labeled, and thus come into a kind of existence that we accept as being real, much as we suspend our sense of reality when watching a movie. When we describe our states of the Union as physical places with political boundaries, most of us realize that the political boundaries are fictional and more or less arbitrary. These political borders exist by social convention, a sort of mutual group acceptance that agrees to honor the existence of the border between, say, Wisconsin and Minnesota, even though we know that there is no such border mandated by nature and no fence separating Hudson, Wisconsin from St. Croix, Minnesota. We call these mental constructs legal fictions. And yes, Hudson, Wisconsin and St. Croix, Minnesota, are legal fictions, too. They don't really exist, but we name a spot on the globe, give it a label, and voila, a mixed reality is born. The actual place is wedded to an artificially constructed location and an arbitrary label, resulting in St. Croix, Minnesota or Detroit, Michigan. It's handy as can be, if you need to get to Detroit, or want to tax property located in and around St. Croix, Minnesota, but we need to realize that this is all fictional and arbitrary, a sort of matrix or grid superimposed on the factual world we actually live in. Yes, there is a town built at the location we call St. Croix, Minnesota, but the town isn't the location, and the name is arbitrary. We could just as well call that location Lumsdale, Umpsaqua. Once you become aware of legal fictions, you can see them everywhere. The title or patent to a piece of land is a legal fiction. The name of your bank is a legal fiction. Even your proper name can be unlawfully converted and construed as a legal fiction. While we all know that GM, and BMW, and IBM are big commercial corporations in various lines of business, it's generally harder for people to see that DOJ, FBI, CIA, USMC, U.S. District Court, State of Georgia and IRS are all commercial corporations in various lines of business in exactly the same way. The Department of the Army and the Oconto Fire Department and the Green Hills Food Cooperative are all legal fictions, too. These organizations which appear to be part of the government aren't part of any sovereign government at all. They are subcontractors, hired professionals who are employees of corporations that are, in turn, subcontractors of various incorporated holding companies, who are, in turn, subcontractors of principals who are obligated to perform under the constitutions. More legal fictions. With every layer or compartment built within this system, both knowledge and accountability are lost, until we have subcontractors of subcontractors of subcontractors of subcontractors, and often, the endline subcontractors are being misguided and are ramming around terrorizing the people who fund their paychecks. This is what happens when we let legal fictions run wild, and fail to recognize the difference between all these persons and living people. Or even worse, forget who we are and where we are. We can lose our way, and become lost in a fictional world, at the mercy of the monsters who inhabit the realms of fiction. Thought forms, or as we call them, thought constructs, are very handy for organizing things, for making useful plans and agreements, and for defining functions and duties. Thus, especially in terms of business and government, thought constructs and legal persons are common as dirt, and most of us can readily understand that mayor or governor or any other such office of personhood is a legal fiction. Both private corporate offices and public offices are all legal fictions. Each such legal fiction has to be defined and a label or title has to be applied to it, in order to give it form and certain meaning, just as GM had to define itself with a name and trademarks and copyrights in order to distinguish its products and business persona. Each office has to have duties and rights assigned. One of the pernicious evils of using legal fictions as we use them today, is that the lines between fact and fiction can become blurred and our awareness of legal fictions can become dulled to a point where we no longer realize that we are dealing with fictional entities, like the state of Georgia. When this happens, the meaning and importance and standing of actual and factual people can fade away and be lost in a hall of mirrors. Let's take an important example, your name. Let's say that your parents named you, Ellie Mae, which is your given name, and also say that you inherited the family name, Johansson. Your proper name is then bicameral, it has two parts or houses. Ellie Mae is your own house, and Johansson is your family house. We see this same system in play in legislatures, congresses, and parliaments the world over. Taken together, this yields your proper name, Ellie Mae Johansson. Your proper name is called your lawful person. It's a person, that is, it is a fiction, but it is lawful, and therein lies an important distinction. Lawful persons stand under and are protected by the public law, such as the constitutions. Legal persons stand under various forms of private corporation law, and have no such protections, and here's the rub. In international jurisdiction there is no practical way of telling the difference between your lawful person standing on the land, and a legal person of the same exact name, employed by a corporation. Ellie Mae Johansson looks and sounds the same whether she is standing on the land or drifting on the sea. But bear in mind that the lawful person known as Ellie Mae Johansson is owed the public law and all her constitutional protections, while a legal person also named Ellie Mae Johansson is subject to whatever whims and private laws and statutes and codes her bosses dream up for her. Your given name, in this case, Ellie Mae, is your own property, a gift from your parents. Your family name, in this case, Johansson, belongs to all the Johanssons that are scattered around the world. Your proper name, also known as your lawful person, in this case, Ellie Mae Johansson, stands on the land of your birth and under the public law including the constitutions of your country. Your proper name, however, can be mistaken for the name of a legal person operating in the international jurisdiction of the sea, and such legal fictions are subject to whatever abuse and whims and codes and regulations may befall them. Why? Because legal fictions are unhinged and detached from factual reality. I was recently sent an article in which the United States Bar Association, a municipal corporation franchise, voted to implement forced vaccinations and make them mandatory. But we can't prosecute them for it. It's almost a joke. You can't harm a corporation by vaccinating it. Bring on the needles. You can only harm clueless people who have forgotten who they are, and who, voluntarily, line up and obey mandates issued to legal fiction persons, like Ellie M. Johansson. The tragedy is that there are plenty of clueless people who do accept such bogus mandates and who do act upon them to their own serious detriment and the detriment of others around them. When they come back to the United States Bar Association and to Pfizer and the United States government because they are the 1 in 25 who has been crippled, maimed, or murdered as a result of obeying such a mandate, they or their devastated families will be told, "We're sorry, but you did this to yourself. It was entirely voluntary." Just like paying federal income tax is voluntary. Just like selective service is voluntary. Oh, and by the way, since the 1980s all the vaccine manufacturers have been released from any responsibility for adverse side effects caused by vaccines. The United States Congress used to stand good for it, but they are bankrupt and permanently out of business, so, take your misery and your injuries down the street, because there is nobody here who owes you any care or consideration for vaccine-related injuries. P.S. We are all legal fictions, and you are a living man. Too bad you got confused about that. Let's see if Facebook has the balls to ban this information as being contrary to their community, i.e., corporate, standards.
Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box. Thank you for subscribing, liking and sharing.